The businesses that are impacted by the sunsetting provisions make up probably about 80 to 90% of the closely held and family-owned businesses in this country. So it's a really big deal. Recently, I had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and present to a tax team, a subcommittee of the Ways and Means Committee, the subcommittee that is totally focused on the tax policies, specifically the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2018 that President Trump had put into place at that time. And so there's a number of provisions in that tax law that are sunsetting at the end of 2025. It was part of the negotiation when they put the act in place. The chair of the Ways and Means Committee has assigned or formed 10 tax teams to go out and study what these provisions have done for businesses in America. Pros, cons, should we keep these tax policies? What's good about them? What do we need maybe to tweak when these sunset provisions come in? The main purpose of the roundtable that I was asked to present was related to succession planning with family-owned businesses. How are they dealing with specifically the estate tax exemption? The TCJA increased the exemption for taxable estates. Currently today, it's up to $13.6 million per person. So if you have a married couple, you're looking at a little over $27 million of an estate that would not have a taxable estate. They wouldn't have to pay any federal estate tax. The sunset would bring that back down to $5 million, which is what it was when the act was in place, increased for inflation. So we were projecting that would bring it to somewhere around $7 million today. That would cut it about in half. That still sounds like a lot of money for a lot of people in this country, but specifically for closely held and family-owned businesses, and in particular, farms and farmers, it is not a lot. Farmers in particular have very valuable assets in their land. They will have miles and miles of land worth a lot of money that they can't just sell off to pay their federal estate tax. And so it's a very common issue in the farming community, as well as manufacturers who have large plants with very valuable equipment. They can't just sell a division or lay off a bunch of people just to pay estate tax. So the problem is liquidity. So it's not necessarily the dollar amount of the exemption, it's how do you liquidate those assets or come up with enough money to pay that estate tax. It's very different between a closely held company or a farm and a publicly traded company. Publicly traded companies perpetuate. They just keep going. They have individual stockholders and there's no estate tax at the level of a publicly traded company. Whereas the rest of the nation is subject to this estate tax on the value of their business. So essentially, a business owner or farmer has to buy their business back from the federal government when they die. It's not a fair position for these family-owned businesses to be in. And the big talk in DC right now is our national debt. That is what's driving a tremendous amount of discussion in Washington, D.C., and specifically in these sunsetting tax provisions. They were expensive, and there were not cuts on the expense side of things the last few years. So the deficit has gotten pretty large. And so the argument is these tax cuts need to change because we got to pay for it somehow. So it's your typical argument. Do we cut taxes or do we cut expenses? I think there's definitely going to be a finding some common ground no matter what happens in November. I think as we get closer to the election, we'll start hearing a little bit more, especially on what maybe some proposed tax policies might be. We really haven't heard that yet. It really also does come into play in a lot of the valuation work that we do here at Adamy. It was a real honor to be able to go to DC and really represent what these business owners are fighting for.